How you doing? Today here I am in Forest Lawn, Cypress, California. As you can see, a lot of construction going on around this little church. Over in the far end of the cemetery, Glenn Quinn from Roseanne is here. A few famous people here. And over there, a lot of funerals today. Very quiet in this area though. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to find the grave I'm looking for. It's of a child, and when it's a grave of a child, it's always difficult, always a little harder. And this is a particularly tragic incident that could have been easily averted. It didn't have to go down this way. It still makes me mad. I mean, we all heard of the Twilight Zone movie, the disaster that happened on the set, the helicopter crash. Maybe you haven't. I'm going to tell you about it. And yeah, this is a child here. So when it comes to children, animals, the innocence, it just breaks my heart. And I'm going to tell you everything I know about the story. I mean, it was 1982 when this movie was made. It was 4 different stories, directed by 4 different directors. It was based on the TV series. And John Landis directed this particular piece, one of the 4. And the movie was produced by Steven Spielberg. I have a lot of anger when I think about it. I get angry about people who I feel didn't maybe pay the price they should have had to pay for this tragedy. John Landis is right up there. I'm sure he has regrets now and feels terrible, but I don't have any sympathy for him. I have sympathy for the 3 victims, not for John Landis. A helicopter was used in a piece they were doing on, I think, Vic Morrow's character. I believe he was traveling back in time to Vietnam. He was trying to picks up 2 kids in a village supposed to be in Vietnam. It was actually filmed up in Santa Clarita, California. One under each arm. He runs through a little river, and there's explosions going off, and it's supposed to be like he's saving them from an American attack on the village. And they're running through the river, and this is all on camera. They're running through the river. The helicopter is 25 feet from them. 25 feet from the river. A helicopter. I think we've all seen, movies and TV shows, if you haven't been in a helicopter yourself, when you get out, you bend down and you run, even though the blades are really high, because they're very scary and very loud. And even though you're not going to be hit, you still bend down and run. It's 25 feet away, this helicopter. And tragedy struck. The children were hired after Renee's uncle was approached by a colleague whose wife was a production secretary for the film. And then Chen thought of his brother's 6-year-old daughter Renee, whose parents agreed to let her participate. He then called a Vietnamese colleague, Daniel Lee, who had a 7-year-old son named Micah, who was an outgoing young boy, loved posing for pictures, so his parents thought he'd be interested. Chen testified that he was never informed that either of the children would be working near explosives or even under the helicopter. They were being paid under the table. Why? Because state law permitted that they not be allowed. Children that young could not work at night. John Landis, he opted not to seek a special waiver, either because he didn't think he would get permission for such a late hour, because he knew that he would not get approval for young children in a scene like that. The casting agents apparently were unaware about anything that the children would be involved in this scene. When the associate producers told the children's parents not to tell any firefighters on the set that the children were part of the scene, and hid them from a fire safety officer who worked as a welfare worker. A fire safety officer was concerned that the blast would cause a crash, but he did not tell Landis of his concerns. There's a lot of people that fall here. So it's up in Indian Dunes where they filmed it. It's a movie ranch in Valencia, which is now Santa Clarita, the Valencia neighborhood. Little Micah should be around here somewhere. I feel like I'm close. I'll tell you about the accident and then get into more as we get to another grave. So the night scene called for Vic Morrow's character to carry the 2 children out of a deserted village across a shallow river while being pursued by American soldiers in a hovering helicopter. Vietnam War veteran Dorsey Wingo was piloting the helicopter. During the filming, he staged his helicopter 25 feet from the ground while hovering near a large mortar effect. He then turned the aircraft 180 degrees to the left for the next camera shot. The effect was detonated while the helicopter's tail rotor was still above it, the metal lid on top of the mortar striking the tail rotor, causing the rotor to fail and detach from the tail, then spun out of control. At the same time, Vic Morrow dropped the little girl into the water. He was reaching out to grab her when the helicopter fell on top of her, and then Vic Morrow and little Micah, for lack of a better term, were sliced by the blades. Here's where it gets a little, I'll say it, Vic Morrow and little Micah were decapitated by the main blades. And little Renee, she was crushed to death. All 3 died almost instantly. Like I said, I'm going to get more into blame or more into what happened afterwards as we continue along, because we have 2 other graves to visit. But little Micah should be right around here. Here he is. Micah Din Lee, January 7th, 1975, July 23rd, 1982. Thank God for showing us the greatest is love. Lo, I am with you always. Little Micah's right by this church. If you want to come out to Forest Lawn Cemetery. Right there. Okay, we're going to go now to visit another one of the victims' graves. 3 victims. Nobody served any jail time. They were acquitted, but I'm going to get more into that as we move along. Rest in peace, little Micah. Alright, so I made it to Hillside Memorial Cemetery. This is right near LAX, and Vic Morrow is just beside the road here. I've been out to Hillside for many, many videos, and I've been to Vic Morrow's grave before, and I remember last time I came out, it was kind of hard to see, or hard to find, because they're all, if you look here, they're all flat headstones, but he's right around here. Vic Morrow, of course, continuing the story, was the main actor, and apparently right before the scene was shot, he said, what am I doing here? I should have a double for this. Those are his last words. So he was very worried about the shoot. Rightfully so. And right beside the road, about 6 in, block 512, here's Vic Morrow. It says Vic Morrow, 1929 to 1982. I loved him as Dad. To everyone else, he was Vic. So I left off explaining what happened on the set, and then at the trial I went into further detail. And you can get information from all sorts of sites on the web. I'm using a couple of different ones. I'm going to read this part right here because this is about the trial. At the trial, the defense claimed that the explosions were detonated at the wrong time, and an assistant cameraman on board the helicopter testified that production manager Dan Aykroyd told the pilot, Wingo, "That's too much, let's get out of here," when the explosions were detonated, but John Landis shouted out over the radio, "Get lower, lower, get over, lower." And then the assistant cameraman said that the pilot tried to leave the area, but that we lost our control and regained it, and then I could feel something let go, and we began spinning around in circles. Another camera operator who was on board testified that Landis had earlier shrugged off warnings about the stunt with the comment, "We may lose the helicopter." So, thought about the helicopter first. And then someone else acknowledged that Landis might have been joking when he made the remark, but he learned not to take anything the man said as a joke. It was his attitude. He didn't have time for suggestions from anybody. So going with, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but John Landis had a reputation as being a bit of a dictator and hard-nosed on the set, in his way or no way. This is just what I've heard or read about John Landis, and yeah, I think I've made it clear. I'm not a big fan of John Landis, or most of his crappy movies. Jennifer Jason Leigh, incredible actress. It's her father, Vic Morrow, so maybe she had that written. I loved him as Dad. Now we're going to go over to Glendale, which is, right now we're right near Culver City, so we're going across Los Angeles over to Glendale, where we're going to visit the third victim of the crash. Rest in peace, Mr. Morrow. So ultimately, a 7-man, 5-woman jury deliberated 9 days before finding John Landis innocent of 5 counts of involuntary manslaughter in connection with the helicopter crash. 3 other filmmakers and the pilot also were acquitted on all counts against them. That's little Renee's grandfather at her gravesite at the funeral. We're going to be going there next. Neither the fatal scene nor any reference to the children was included in the final cut of the film. The defense maintained that the tragedy was not criminal in nature, but rather an unfortunate accident resulting from quote-unquote unforeseen and unforeseeable circumstances. In essence, the defense pinned the blame on a special effects crew member who ignited the fatal explosives, and they said without looking up at the helicopter. When we get to the next location, Renee's grave at Forest Lawn Glendale, my microphone with its windsock had broken earlier in the day, and it's a little windy, but it's fine. Let's go. quite a steep hill in the Everlasting Love section. I'm looking for 3707. That's the grave marker. I just passed a few. Looking for little Renee Chen. And here you're going to see those markers is what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for 3707. That's 3799. Probably have to go down a little further. I think we know where it is. I think I know. And here we are, just right. This is the top of the hill. Right there, you see that statue over there at the top. It's a big statue, looks small from here. And here's little Renee. Renee Chen, April 1st, 1976 to July 23rd, 1982. 6 years old. Beloved daughter and granddaughter. So when you come into Forest Lawn, the mausoleum where Michael Jackson is right there, of course, and that's a temple of Santa Sabina. And you'll see that as you pass in, just up the hill is actually, I've passed this hill countless times, never knowing exactly where or who was up here, and little Renee is just up here. Huge cemetery, Glendale. Forest Lawn here. So that's my video about the Twilight Zone crash, the Twilight Zone accident, the Twilight Zone disaster. The Twilight Zone could have been prevented disaster if certain precautions were taken and certain people didn't let their ego get in the way and didn't realize that human lives are way more important than a stupid movie. And if you're a fan of the movie, I'm sorry. I'm saying that about all movies. As a movie lover, you don't want to see somebody, let alone 3 people, lose their lives to make entertainment. I hope the 3 victims are resting peacefully. I don't know how they, I hope they are, but it was such a brutal way to leave this earth. It's something that's always stuck with me, this tragedy. I've wanted to cover for so long. I'm glad I finally did. Vic Morrow, too young, and the 2 children, far too young. I want to say a lot of bad words about the people that were involved in this. I'm going to leave it at that. John Landis and the crew, who, the specific people, not the whole crew, John Landis and the specific people that were pushing this stunt to go further, and look what happened. And they have to live with that the rest of their lives. And I hope they think about it every day. Do they? I don't know. Egos, man. John Landis, he had 1 or 2 good movies. I don't care to watch any more of them, though. God, I want to say something really awful to him. And I probably would if I saw him. It's just, when it's little kids, it gets me. And as I'm sure you really worked out. Little tiny kids. It's not right. Rest in peace to all 3 victims. Thank you for watching. I love you all. Be good to each other. Peace out.